Okay, we are picking up on page, I just had it, 704. The video I did yesterday left off with John Donne's A Valediction forbidding mourning. I gave a little bit of background. I think it was his class. I might be thinking of my Thursday class. Donne went to work for a man named Thomas Egerton in 1598 when he was 26, I believe. Egerton's young niece went to live with him at the same time, that is, went to live with Egerton. She was 14, so they met then. They got married 3 years later, secretly. And he immediately got fired and all kinds of bad stuff happened to him. They remained married until she died in 1617. During the 17 years they were married, she had 12 pregnancies. If I remember right, 3 or 4 of those children died at birth or were stillborn. None of Donne's descendants lived past 1700. Okay. This poem is A Valediction forbidding mourning. And according to, I think I mentioned this the other day, according to Isaac Walton, his first biographer, when Donne was getting ready for this trip on the continent, he was working for a man named Robert Drury, acting as his secretary, handling all of his correspondence and all that kind of stuff. In 1611, 1612, they did this trip to the continent. And Donne's wife was pregnant at the time, again, according to Isaac Walton, and she told him she had a premonition that while he was traveling, the child she was carrying would die. It happened. I mean, that literally happened. Okay. Some have suggested that the poem might date before 1611. Almost all scholars, however, say, nope, there's one particular indication in the poem that it must be after 1610, which we'll talk about when we get to it. So the poem is made up of a series of images or comparisons, okay? These comparisons, beginning with Donne, and then there's about a half dozen authors later in the 17th century, these comparisons are called metaphysical conceits. The term metaphysical conceit is coined about 45, 50 years after Donne's death to describe the kinds of comparisons Donne made. And what another writer says about these, another famous English writer says about these, is that in metaphysical conceits, Donne and other writers like him violently yoke together two dissimilar things. That is, they take something over here with something over here and make them tie together, okay? And the way that Donne and others do that is they find one point of similarity. So usually when you make a comparison, you're comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. Well, a metaphysical conceit is like comparing an apple to a tungsten rod. Like, what in the world are you comparing, okay? So we're going to see a bunch of things that Donne compares in here. The most famous comparison in this is the two lovers' souls to the legs of a compass, like a compass you use to inscribe a circle with. As virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their said friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say no. So first image is of men dying. What kind of men? Virtuous men. How do they die? We're told they die mildly. What does that mean? They don't die kicking and screaming. They don't die swearing at God, swearing at the world, how unfair life is and such. We're going to read a poem later by another English poet, a 20th century English poet named Dylan Thomas, and the poem is called Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And a refrain in the poem is, do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. That is, fight death tooth and nail. Not how virtuous men die. Why? Because they're not afraid of death. There's nothing to fear for a virtuous person. So the rest of that stanza is about the people sitting around the deathbed and wondering, is he still alive? Because lots of times when someone dies, you can't tell immediately. Put your head to their chest, hold a mirror to the mouth to see if it fogs up at all. Okay? So, while some of their friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say no. So let us melt. Notice the simile begins with as. In the second quatrain, the second stanza, finishes it with so. So, let us melt and make no noise. No tear floods, nor sigh tempests move. Let us melt, that is, let us dissolve. Let me part from you like the virtuous man's soul parts from his body, without tear floods or sigh tempests. These are Petrarchan conventions, Petrarchan images, okay, that he's using. They come from an Italian poet named Petrarch, who is one who invented the sonnet form. We'll talk about sonnet form when we get to an actual sonnet. And what Petrarch did in his sonnets, Petrarch was writing about a woman that he loved from afar, all right, was when the speakers of his poems, the personae of his poems, were elated in love because Laura smiled at him or something, then he describes her face as being like the sun coming from behind a cloud, such beauty that it enraptured him, all this kind of stuff. When she frowned at him, or when she rebuffed his advances, that produced tears in the speaker, okay? Or it produced sighs, sorrowful sighs in the speaker. Those tears, in Petrarch's hands, become the sources of floods that destroy crops and people and towns and such. The sighs become the source of winds that become like hurricanes. So many of these Petrarchan images are just everyday human expressions of emotion that get jacked up, that get exaggerated, hyperbolized greatly, all right? So, no tear floods nor sigh tempests move. Let's part quietly, without any tears, without any sighing, to a profanation of our joys to tell the laity our love. Profanation of our joys. What does it mean to profane something? If we had a painting for an altar in a Catholic church, right here, image of Madonna and Child, okay? And I threw red paint on it, like happens at museums all around the world by whack jobs. That would profane that image. It would make it less holy, less sacred, etc. Assuming the image is meant to be holy and used in a religious ceremony and not just simply a photograph or a painting, right? Profanation of our joys would be something that belittles, that besmirches, that dirties our joys. What are their joys? Their love. The joys are the joys of their love. To tell the laity our love. And when he uses the word laity, it introduces a religious idea. Because laity is only a religious idea. In the Christian church, whichever branch, you've got two classes of people. You've got the laity and the clergy. The clergy are those who are specially trained, who are, to use the terminology, ordained. Hands have been laid on them, prayers have been made over them, so that they can then practice the quote-unquote secrets or mysteries of the church. They can perform baptisms, they can perform marriages, perform funerals, utter certain prayers that others can't, etc. Okay? They're the initiates into the real secrets, so to speak. The laity are the participants out there. So if this were a church, I would be the preacher / minister. I would be the clergy, the one inducted into these mysteries and such. And you guys are the ones who receive the benefit of my knowledge, training, and the kinds of rites I would perform for and with you, etc. Okay? He says it would profane our joys to tell who's the laity within the poem. Those who don't know about our love. Or, that's one way of looking at it, or those who have a love that is different than ours. Their love, we're going to be told, is refined. It's purified. That's going to come a couple stanzas later. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears. Men reckon what it did and meant. But trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. Last weekend, I think it was a week ago today, in fact, there was an earthquake in the Northeast, centered in New Jersey. Felt as far away, I think, as Long Island, maybe New Hampshire. Philadelphia rocked and rolled, New York rocked and rolled, you know. And because you don't have earthquakes regularly in the Northeast, but they're not unheard of. I mean, they have them every 2 or 3 decades, okay? You had certain stupid people, including a couple of members of Congress, attribute it to climate change and all this other kind of nonsense. I'm not saying climate change is nonsense. I mean, attributing earthquakes to climate is utter BS. I'm from California. I know a lot about earthquakes. That's what the moving of the earth is. And people last weekend reckoned what it did and meant. Why are we having these earthquakes? Okay? Happens whenever, especially when there's a major earthquake. The one in Indonesia a couple decades ago that killed 250,000 people. Front page headlines around the world. Why did this happen? Where is God? You know, etc. Okay? But trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. And what he's talking about there, got to spend some time on this, is an old cosmological view of the universe, or an old view of the cosmology of the universe, the structure of the universe. This view is called the Ptolemaic conception, and that comes from the Greek mathematician, astronomer Ptolemy, right? He's not the one who invents this. He's the one who kind of writes it all down and gives description to it. Some of the ideas in this go back at least 300 or 400 years before Ptolemy. Because Pythagoras, Greek mathematician, Pythagorean theorem, he talked about the movement of these spheres and the music of these spheres in his day. And he was, like I said, 3 centuries or so before Ptolemy. Aristotle also talks about this, and he's before Ptolemy. So the idea is, in the Ptolemaic conception, is that the earth is the center of the universe. So my hands together are the earth. And around the earth are 9 ever larger concentric spheres. Okay? Like crystal spheres, glass. Outside those, so this is the orbit of the moon. The moon is beneath the first sphere. So you have the 9 spheres. Outside that 9th sphere is what is called the Empyrean. It's like empty space, so to speak. Okay? That's where God dwells. God, according to Aristotle, God is the first mover, primum mobile, prime mover, right? God moves the first sphere. And once he moves that first sphere, because that sphere is moving, it influences the sphere beneath it. So it starts to move. And it influences the sphere beneath it. So this one influences this one. These 2 influence this one. These 3 influence that one. That's the source for astrology and modern day horoscopes. Why? Because the planets and the stars are all out here. And because this one influences this one, and these together influence all the way down here, you can see how the movement of these things and the planets and powers that are in them have a great influence on Earth, which is why it was so important to know what planet you were born under. If you're born under Mars, it means you're warrior-like. If you're born under Venus, I mean, there's been books written in the last 20 years, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Men are argumentative, belligerent, blah, 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 blah. Women are naturally lovers, they're peacemakers, etc. Okay? So the nine spheres move. When they move, they make a music. We're going to talk about that when we get to a later poem. Source of astrology. Okay, so that's Ptolemy, that's the Ptolemaic conception. Take this idea out of the entire universe, and if you look at it as just the solar system, it's called the geocentric view, because it was thought Earth is at the center of the solar system, the sun revolves around the Earth. It was thought Venus and Mars revolved around the Earth, okay, and everything else. In, I think it's the early 16th century, it might be the late 15th century, beginning with Tycho Brahe, B-R-A-C-H-E, I think is how his last name is spelled. You had these mathematicians start to poke holes in this theory. And they did it based upon analyzing the movements of the objects in the heavens. And I think it was Brahe who kind of put the first block into place to build a new conception. And then Johannes Kepler came along. He added on Brahe's theories, and then Nicolaus Copernicus in the 16th century. Copernicus was one who took their ideas and formulated what's called the heliocentric view. Copernicus said, forcefully, the sun is at the center of the solar system. Earth revolves around the sun. All the other planets revolve around the sun. And I think Copernicus even said the sun itself is not stationary. The sun itself is also moving, not just revolving, but that we are all also moving in space, okay? This idea gets proven in 1610 by Galileo Galilei, Italian mathematician, astronomer. Galileo publishes his findings after he creates a telescope and stuff, and he proves Copernicus is entirely correct. Catholic Church arrests him, puts him under house arrest until his death. But they also force him to recant, say you're wrong. And he did. He still stayed under house arrest. I'm pretty sure it was on his deathbed where he recanted his recantation. He said, I'm right, the church is wrong. And I think it's within about 100 years. I could be wrong. He dies in 1630s, I think. I think it's about 100 years that the Catholic Church admits error. Galileo was right, we were wrong, okay? All of this is important because trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. Trepidation means movement. Donne's speaker is saying, the movement of these is a whole lot greater than a little earthquake, all right? But it's innocent. How's it innocent? These don't have any influence on our lives. That's the line that tells us the poem was written after 1610. And Donne was, I think I mentioned the other day, he was kind of regarded as the greatest mind of his day, or many regarded him. He read science avidly. He loved maps and all that kind of stuff, all right? So, trepidation of the spheres, though greater far, is innocent. Dull sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence, because it doth remove those things which elemented it. So, first line, dull sublunary lovers love. So here's the earth, Here's the orbit of the moon. Everything from the orbit of the moon to the earth is sublunary. And what that means is it's impermanent. Everything from the moon down to here changes. Heraclitus, ancient Greek philosopher, famously said, all is in flux. Said you can never step in the same river twice. Why? Once you step in that water, where is the water? It's already downstream. Okay? Everything beneath the moon doesn't last, right? So dull, sublunary lovers love. The love that is held by people who are governed by this. Okay? He's not saying everybody is governed by the moon. Dull, sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense. Whose soul, that is, the thing that makes up their love is sense, means sensory perception. The thing that guides sublunary lovers are sensory perceptions. Eyes, ears, nose, mouth, touch. I asked my first class, what do you have to do before you can fall in love with someone? And there's a long pause. And finally, the guy sitting here goes, go on a date. And I said, go back even farther. Before you can go on a date, what do you have to do? You got to talk to them. Before that, you have to meet the person. You can't fall in love with someone without ever having heard or seen that individual. You can't fall in love with an idea, in other words. And some people say, text and mail. That's still what? That's a perception that you're getting through your eyes, etc. Okay? You've got to see. So, those sublunary lovers love, the essence of their love are those sensory perceptions. And it can't admit absence. Why? If my lover is here, I'm a dull sublunary lover, and she goes out the door and the door closes, what happens when she's gone? Out of sight, out of mind. Why? Because I don't see her anymore. Because it doth remove those things which elemented it. But we, I and thou, are not dull sublunary lovers. In other words, we can admit absence. Why? We, by a love so much refined that ourselves know not what it is. That is, we don't know what the soul of our love is. In one sense, there's never a correct answer to. My wife and I have been married almost 39 years. Why do you love me? If a woman asks a man that and he says, your body, wrong answer. Immediately, that's the wrong answer. Because what's going to happen to her body? We've already read 2 Carpe Diem poems. Ultimately, it's going to get saggy and die. Does that mean that love totally dies at that point? Better not answer that one. What's the best answer? It's all of you. I can't put it in words, So he's saying, we can't say what our love is. Why? Because our love is refined. That is, he goes outside the order of the moon. We, he says, enter assured of the mind. What does the enter mean? Between. Between minds. We are assured. I am assured of her love. She is assured of my love. Shakespeare, we're going to read a poem by Shakespeare later. Sonnet 116. Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments, he says. The first line and a half. Let me not to the marriage of true minds, not hearts. And the true there is important. True means faithful minds. Not minds telling lies, okay? So we, into assured of the mind, care less eyes, lips, and hands do this. It doesn't matter if I am physically absent from you for a while. Why? Because we have, what does the inter-assured of the mind really mean? What do the two individuals have for each other? And I don't mean love. Faith, trust. Okay? Our two souls, therefore, which are one, though I must go. Why are they one? They're married, and the two shall become one. Though I must go, endure not yet a breach, but an expansion, like gold to airy thinness beat. So he takes an image of their two souls doing what? Though I must go, they stretch like a rubber band. He didn't have rubber bands. He uses the image of gold beaten to airy thinness. Why? Can you beat gold to airy thinness? Theoretically, yes, because gold is a malleable metal, like lead. Gold doesn't break. Gold bends, but it doesn't break. Steel breaks. Tin breaks, okay? So why doesn't he use lead? Because gold is rare and valuable. Lead is plentiful because it's, and not valuable. So it's almost like between that stanza and the next stanza, the if they be true, be two, it's almost like she does something like, come on, really? Gold to airy thinness? If they be two, he says, they are two so as stiff twin compasses are two. And by stiff twin compasses, I always forget to bring one in. He's talking about the two legs of a geometric compass. Compass you use to inscribe a circle. Okay? This is one of Donne's most famous metaphysical conceits, comparing their souls to a compass. So how are they two? Thy soul, let's say the blue one, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do. Okay, so this is her foot, this is the speaker's foot, and the speaker goes like this. Notice this one doesn't move if this one does this, but this isn't how you use a compass, is it? If I want to inscribe a black mark on a sheet of paper here, this has got to be on this plane. Once it's on that plane, this one just now reclined after it, or inclined after it. Extrapolate from that, the farther and farther and farther that one goes away, the more and more and more this one bends after it. In other words, even though we are two, we're still connected. And though it in the center sit, yet when the other far doth roam, that is my soul, it leans, her soul, and hearkens after it. And the hearkens, double meaning. Leans after it, and hearken means to call also, to draw back. We're going to read a poem in just a minute that's going to involve a possible hearkening over a couple of streets. It leans and hearkens after it and grows erect as that comes home. In other words, her soul, staying where it is going to ensure what? So if this were an actual compass, and I did this, how would I make the circle? Well, I could do it a couple of ways, but one of the ways, if I could get it off, I could do it as like this. So I want to make the black circle. What am I just drawn? Let's go there, and that's going to be the outside. It's the radius. The circle is going to go around like that, come back to this point, and then to make it come back, I've just done what? I've made sure the circle is perfect. I've made sure I've returned to where I began. There's a reason why we wear these things, some, when they get married. Notice they're circles, they're not squares. Square would be a little bit uncomfortable, but a square has what? 4 sides and angles. Circles have no sides. They're symbolic of eternity. Such wilt thou be to me. You will be what? You will be my fixed foot. What's another idea? Donne doesn't use it here. Shakespeare uses it in that sonnet I referred to. What's the quote-unquote fixed foot for mariners, for navigation in the northern hemisphere? Anybody know? It's the North Star. Why? Assuming a cloudless sky, you can always, anywhere in the northern hemisphere you are, you can always find, assuming cloudless sky, the North Star. Okay? If you're in the southern hemisphere, I believe it's the Southern Cross is the constellation to look for. That is always apparent. It never dips below the horizon. The North Star never dips below the horizon. Okay? It's a perfect or infinite, if you want, reference point. All right? That's what he's saying. You will always make me come back to you. All right? Bear in mind, according to that story by Walton, she was afraid something would happen. Okay? And it did. Another one of Donne's poems, the woman being addressed is afraid that the person who's going to travel will not return. And he uses a very similar idea. You have to stay here. Why? So that you can draw me back. Okay? Next poem. Ode on a Grecian Urn, page 660. Odes are covered in the section on poetic forms, structures. Need to know what it is. The dictionary, the book, the definition in your book is something like a poem that uses elevated, high diction on a formal or serious topic with a serious tone to it. Look at the actual definition. It's going to show up on a quiz. And I should throw out, even if we don't cover every one of these poems that's on the syllabus in class, they will all show up on the final. And there will be quizzes for all of them. Most of the quizzes are just going to take the form of, here's a title, who's the author, kind of a thing. Most of the quizzes. There's only going to be 3 quizzes over poetry. And then the exam. Okay, so this is John Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn. Look at his dates. 1795 to 1821. He died when he was 26. He died of TB. I'm almost positive that at this time he was already dying and knew it. Okay? Ode on a Grecian Urn. Keats lived not too far from the British Museum in London. In his day, it would have been probably, I don't know, hour-long, maybe half-hour-long ride by coach or carriage. Be a little bit longer walk, about 5 miles. At the British Museum, they have hundreds, if not thousands, of urns from ancient Greece. Okay? Shaped somewhat like this. Okay? Most of them are black, and they have marble affixed around them. Like, this would be black, and this would be marble, black, marble, etc. So you have different images in these pieces that are placed around or on the urn. And I always tell my students, I could swear I've either seen this particular urn or I've seen a painting that is almost identical to what he describes here. A painting that is pre-Keats. Okay, that's not a painting somebody did after he wrote the poem. So, stanza 1. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape, of deities or mortals, or of both, in Tempe or the dales of Arcady? What men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? So, we have in that first stanza, it's kind of like a brief overview. We get a little indication of almost everything that the speaker is going to address that is on this urn. And it begins with, "Thou still unravished bride of quietness." Still means obviously unmoving, but it also means constantly, always, perpetually, unravished bride of quietness. Well, the unravished bride of quietness is this woman that's going to be described later on, who is fleeing from a lover. "Thou foster child of silence and slow time, Sylvan historian." The Sylvan historian is the entire vase. It's called Sylvan. Your gloss tells you rustic. Yes, that is one meaning for Sylvan. There is a closer root meaning, however. Sylvan has to do with trees. Okay? Well, there are trees. There are leaves on this thing. There's one, a fringe of leaves, like up here there's a piece of marble shaped like leaves, and in another scene there are actual trees, a forest. Okay? "Who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme?" That is, if you have eyes to see, you can read this image. Very famous phrase in English literature. A picture paints 1,000 words. Takes 1,000 words to express what a picture does. "What leaf friend legend haunts about thy shape?" That's probably the top image. Okay? "Of deities or mortals or of both." That is, what are these beings? Is it us, or are they gods and goddesses? In Tempe, or the Dales of Arcady, a couple of places, valleys in Greece. "What men or gods are these? What maidens loathe? What mad pursuit?" Somebody's being pursued. "What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels?" There are pipes being played. What's the story, in other words? And the rest of the poem is explicating this story, this image. So, "Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter." That is an allusion, possibly, to this, to the movement of the spheres, which according to Pythagoras, I think it was Pythagoras, said, if we heard that with our earthly ears, we would immediately die. Our souls would leave our bodies and be lifted to this paradisal experience because it is so beautiful. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. So there's an allusion possibly to that, but then the poet brings us straight back to a specific image on this, and the image is of this: panpipes. Panpipes are, you take a reed, a hollow tube, okay, and you put next to it several others, shorter length, and they have a reed in them, so that when you blow in them, depending upon the length of the tube, you get a higher or lower note. Look up, should have mentioned this in my first class, or my other classes. Look up on YouTube, a guy named Zamfir. Multiple records, okay? Grammy winner, if I remember right, for his panpipes playing. So, therefore ye soft pipes play on. Notice, someone's playing pipes on this, but these are unheard melodies. Why? Because there's no recorder in there. There's nothing playing actual music. Not to the sensual ear, but more endeared. Notice the play on words there, ear, endeared. More meaningful than just to the ear. Pipe to the spirit. Ditties of no tone. Somebody is playing these pipes in the imagery. But we don't hear the music. But that doesn't mean there's not music there. Okay? It's ditties of no tone. that are piped to what? To the spirit. Can the spirit, the soul, hear? No. Because sensory perception are attributes of the body. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song. It's a young man playing the pipes. Nor ever can those trees be bare, and the trees are full in leaf. It's springtime. Notice, he can never stop playing. Why? Because as with every picture, it's a moment in time. It's frozen in time. He will always have these pipes to his mouth. Those trees will always have leaves. Bold lover, another part of the image, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal. Canst thou kiss what? He's near the goal. He's near the one he wants to kiss. But don't grieve. Why? She cannot fade. So there's a she. The bold lover is chasing her, and she will always be as she is right then. She'll always be, 20, young, beautiful, desirable. He will always be desiring of her. She will always be his goal, and she'll never disappear. Okay? She cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss. Forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. That last line, there's a tinge of something negative there. And that's that he's always going to pursue her. Why? Because he believes she's fair. He believes she's beautiful. He believes she's desirable and such. And she will always be that way. Why? Frozen in time. Here's the tinge of the negative thing. This isn't reality, is it? In the real world, and I think Keats is playing upon this idea from the Middle Ages and Renaissance, women cheat on men. Notice that gets reversed today. Today, almost all the time what you hear is how unfaithful men are. The idea of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance would say, women are the ones who are unfaithful. She will, therefore, because this is a snapshot, she will always look like this. In other words, she will never be able to cheat on him. Happy, happy boughs, talking about the branches, that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu. Happy melodist, the piper again, unwearied, forever piping songs, forever new. He will never grow tired, obviously. More happy love, that is, the man pursuing. More happy, happy love. He'll always be in this heat of passion, forever warm and still to be enjoyed. Still there means yet. Forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passion far below. Why is all breathing human passion far below this image? Because our real passions do what? Do they get preserved? Do they stay the same over time? I've been married nearly 39 years. I don't love my wife the same way today as I did when I first saw her. And it was one of those at first sight. I saw her without even speaking to her. I thought, I'm going to marry her. Scared the living daylights out of her once we started dating, and she dumped me and all that kind of stuff. Okay? What's his point? This, in one sense, is perfect. Why? Because it will always be this way. Down here, we suffer the highs of love and sometimes the utter dejection. It's not perfect in that sense. That leaves a heart, human passion, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead, and a parching tongue. That is, parched tongue means you're thirsty. You need to be filled. You need to be slaked. Stanza 4. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? It's almost like we've gone from this image down to another image. So we're going to see some trees. We're going to see a heifer being led to an altar. The heifer is covered with garlands of flowers. Okay? And off in the distance, and this is where I am 100% sure I've seen this painting, or a painting of something very similar to this image. Because I know of one where there's trees, there's a guy playing pipes, and there's a cow being led to slaughter, essentially, a bunch of people surrounding it, and off in the distance, through the hills, through this valley, you see a little town, and it's like a harbor at the sea, and it's empty, because all the people are around for this like annual celebration. And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can ne'er return. O Attic shape, gloss, possessing classic Athenian simplicity. Well, that could be what it means. It could also just mean, O product of Athens. Okay? The Athenians were known for their artwork. The Spartans weren't. What did the Spartans do well? Better than anybody? War. Okay? Athenians were, the artsy-fartsy types. So, Attic shape, fair attitude with breed or design of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou silent form dost tease us out of thought as doth eternity. That is, he's just sitting here looking at this thing, and he says, it teases me out of thought, teases us out of thought. That is, I look and look, and I finally get to the point where I stop thinking. Not because I understand it all. The speaker's saying, I just sit there and go dumb. Personal experience. I think the first time I went to London, 95. Went to the National Gallery, and there's this one little room in the National Gallery, and it's of a cartoon drawing. Literal term is cartoon. It's not like what you think of cartoons. By Da Vinci of Madonna and Child. It's literally like pastel crayons on this thin piece of paper. And so they have it on this wall. I mean, it's like this big. They have it on this curved wall that's lit behind so that you can see all the marks. I just literally walked in there and started looking at it, and just kind of my jaw dropped. It just blew me away. I just sat there. Well, people would walk in, look at it, oh, that's neat, and go right off. It teases it out of thought, notice, as doth eternity. How does eternity tease us out of thought? Now, there could be two ways. Could be when you are in eternity, that is when you die, you no longer think. Meaning, use what's between here. Because when you're in eternity, you don't have this anymore. It's immediate perception by the soul. Could be that. What else could it be? Try to think about eternity. What's eternity literally mean? It doesn't mean immortality. It doesn't mean infinite time. It means outside of time. We can't comprehend that. We can't even think about that. Why not? Because all of our experience is in time. How do you get outside time? Cold pastoral. Pastoral because it is an image of events out in a natural environment and not in the town. Okay? But it's cold. Why? Because if you were to go up and touch this vase, it would be cold to the touch. Why else? This is mere intellectual appreciation of this. Does that make you all warm and fuzzy inside? Not really. It is an intellectual exercise. When old age shall this generation waste. This generation, 1819. He's 24. What's old age? I think I'm old. All my siblings who are older than me don't think they're old. I think they're pulling the wool over their own eyes. So 62 is what I am. He would have to live another 30 some years, 38 years after this. That would take you up to the 1860s. Okay? So he says, let's say in the 1860s, when this generation is all dead, thou shalt remain. Guess what? If I have seen this face, then it's still around today, 200 years after he wrote this. Which also means it's probably about 2,500 years old. There are vases that go back older than that, from 1000 BC. Not from Greece, but from other places. Okay? He says, and you remain till then, in midst of other woe than ours. Woe implies what? Not a perfect world. Here, it's a perfect world. What? If you remain a friend to man, to whom thou sayest beauty is truth, truth, beauty, one of the most enigmatic lines in all of English literature. People have been writing for over 200 years dissertations on what the hell does Keats mean. What beauty is truth, truth, beauty. Explain. I could have graduate students, I've got a colleague who's a Keats specialist, have them write dissertations on that. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. That is all you know. The truth is beauty, and it's all you need to know. You don't need to know philosophy and music, and all you need to know, beauty is truth and truth is beauty. Still don't know what it means. I've been teaching it for 30 years. Real quickly, Acquainted with the Night, page 711. This is by Robert Frost. It's in the section on symbol, allegory, and irony because it's loaded with symbols. Okay? Robert Frost was an American poet. He became the poet laureate. He read a poem at JFK's inauguration. He along with Carl Sandburg, I think, were JFK's favorite poets. Acquainted with the Night. So you got to look at terms. Acquainted with. What does it mean to be acquainted with? I'm acquainted with you. We're not friends, but I kind of know you a little bit. Same thing. Acquainted with the night. I understand, kind of, the night. What's the night, though? I have been one acquainted with the night. Notice the verb tense. I have been acquainted. It's not, I was acquainted. I was acquainted would mean I was a long time ago and it stopped a long time ago. It's not, I had been acquainted with the night. That would mean it started a long time ago and it ended a long time ago. It continued for a while, but it stopped. It's, I have been, started a long time ago, and I still am. I am right now acquainted with the night. I've walked out in rain and back in rain. I've walked the furthest city light. Does that mean he went to the front door, took a step out, it was raining, went back in? No. I've walked out while it was pouring, and I kept watching. And then I came back after a time. Out walked the furthest city light. We don't know how big the city is, but he went out past the last street lamp and then came back. Those are all implying what? These are long walks. Not necessarily long distance-wise, long time-wise. And again, it's at night. I've looked down the saddest city lane. I passed by the watchman on his beat and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. Who's the watchman on his beat? We don't use that language anymore. Most cities don't have these anymore. This is the cop walking his area at night. And the speaker says, I see him and I look at the ground. Why? I don't want to explain. Don't want to explain what? What are you doing out here? My other two classes, I've got some black men. And I pointed out, class today and one yesterday, I said, if we were all to go for a walk in Belmead at 2:30 in the morning, or I said, if we all individually did that, I said, I would get stopped. And you would get stopped, and you would get stopped, and you would get stopped. But I said, but you two, you'd get stopped a lot more quickly than I would. Hate to say it, it's just a reality of life, you know? He doesn't want, why is he out walking in the night? I've stood still and stopped the sound of feet when far away an interrupted cry came over the houses from another street. Pause, new stanza, but not to call me back or say goodbye. The sound of the feet stopping, it's his feet. Caused by what? A voice a couple of streets away calling out. But then we're told, but not saying, come back or goodbye. So why is the speaker walking? Does he no longer feel accepted? Is he no longer wanted at that home? Was there anger? Was there a fight? It's like, if you had said, come back, I'd have turned around. And further still at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. What's the luminary clock? The word luminary doesn't really give a hint. It's the moon. The moon says the time is neither wrong nor right. Time for what? I have been one acquainted with the night. What characterizes the night? Not in the poem, in the real world. Is it like this right now? No, it's dark. I've been one acquainted with darkness. Most readers, most scholars, say at the very least the poem is touching on depression. The other possibility is it's contemplating suicide. Because people who are suicidal will tell you that their depression is like an overwhelming darkness. It's like a shadow that creeps up and just takes them, and they can't escape from it. It's often called something like the black monster, or Winston Churchill called his depression the black dog. It wouldn't leave him alone. Okay? I don't know if that's what it is about. I kind of think it is. I used to be this kind of person. I would go for long walks when I was in college. I mean, middle of the night, this was on Lookout Mountain. I'd walk down to the bluff and stuff, just dealing with whatever issues. Okay, we'll stop there. I'm going to put up a quiz today. It won't be due till Monday or Tuesday. And it's going to be everything on the syllabus from the 1st of April in the syllabus through April 8th. We haven't covered 3 or 4 of those yet. But again, it's not going to be content-wise on the basis of those poems. It'll be more author to title kind of a thing. But there will be terms that you need to know that are in that first day, and that were on those 2 video lectures that I posted. All right, have a good weekend.